India last week asked Pakistan to reduce its staff strength in the country by half, a decision that came just weeks after the police expelled two Pakistani staffers at the High Commission in Delhi on charges of spying. In a tit-for-tat action that followed, Pakistani security agencies picked up two Indian High Commission staffers in Islamabad, tortured them and framed them in a false case of a road accident and possession of fake currency. The External Affairs Ministry told Pakistan about India's continuing concern about the activities of officials of its mission in Delhi who have been engaged in acts of espionage and dealing with terrorist organizations. The government of India has taken the decision to reduce staff strength in the Pakistan High Commission in New Delhi by 50%. It would reciprocally reduce its own presence in Islamabad to the same proportion. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the downgrading of India-Pakistan ties. Joining me on the program today are Major General Ashwini Sivach, retired defense expert, Jitendra Nath Mishra, former ambassador, and Shakti Sinha, foreign affairs expert. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ambassador, let me begin the program with you first. Let's try and understand and analyze your thoughts really as far as the downgrading of ties between India and Pakistan are concerned.
Well, thank you very much, Frank, for inviting me on this program. It's great to be back once again. Well, the downgrading of ties is part of a process, a long simmering process. There are two ways of looking at it, strategically and tactically. We've had, after the Uri attacks, the Pathankot attacks actually, from 2016, we've not had a dialogue from January, after Prime Minister Modi went to meet Prime Minister Sharif in 2015 in Lahore. After that, we virtually had no ties. So for me, it's part of a tactical process. What is the strategic? Let me start with the strategic and then I'll come to the tactical. The strategic aspect is that these two countries look at their place in history and in the world in a diametrically opposed, conflictual and fundamentally different way. Pakistan, to me, I call it the civilizational revisionist state, not just a revisionist state in terms of strategy and tactics and military capability and posturing, but in terms of civilization. We saw this narrative. Ayub Khan said that if we attack India in 1965, the Hindus will wilt, and one hard knock and they'll go. And his son also had the same kind of argument in Delhi. He said it in Delhi, very undiplomatic. And so therefore, one Pakistani soldier is equal to 10 Indian soldiers. That kind of myth changed significantly. They got a shock in Kargil. And, I'll tell you a story. Professor Hassan Askari Rizvi, the great man, great Pakistani scholar, told me that after Kargil, there was a fundamental reset in at least some sections of the military about Indian fighting capabilities. But you see, in terms of civilization history, Pakistan is our other. I am a Pakistani would say, because I'm not an Indian, period. History begins with the Arab invasion of Sindh. Of course, there are tiny voices who also say that Chanakya is our own, Raja Dahir is our own, but these are very tiny voices. This sort of article comes in the liberal newspaper, The Dawn. You read the Urdu press. It is based on history. Now, that to me is a fundamental shifting of history, the goalpost and the status quo. Therefore, Pakistan is a fundamentally revisionist power. I can tell you many stories of my encounters with Pakistani diplomats and other figures, but there's not much time. So this is the quest, in my mind, for equivalence with India. The larger world of Islam is a great equalizer, so we can keep a much larger enemy at bay with this diplomatic and strategic support from the larger world of Islam, because we are a warrior state. So this is the fundamental narrative of the Pakistani state, not necessarily the Pakistani society, but there is a disconnect between state and society. So where do we go from there? India is, we just want to be left alone and let things be. India evolves in a natural cycle in terms of civilization and history. India is inclusive. India has had ups and downs, but we have never wavered from that vision of being inclusive. My sacred spaces as a practicing Hindu are as much in Pakistan as in India. Meaning, even the Badshahi Mosque in Lahore is part of my sacred space because Islam is part of India's historical DNA. But Pakistanis don't look at it like that. They claim all the Mughal monuments as theirs and exclusively theirs. And they don't allow our space for Hindus and Buddhists in Pakistan or even beyond. So this is the fundamental problem. Now, tactically, it doesn't matter. This is just a cycle of retribution and differences and clashes. We've had Uri, we've had Pathankot, we had Balakot, we had the surgical strikes, and we had the Pakistani riposte after Balakot. So that kind of thing goes up and down. And since the 1990s, the strategic picture has shifted. As Shiv Shankar Menon said, the best years for the Indian economy were the years when Pakistan unleashed terrorism against India, Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir. We just moved ahead. And today we have a $3.02 trillion economy. Pakistan has a $2.58 billion economy, according to the US Department of Agriculture. 1:12 is the ratio. It will become 1:14 in 2030. Right. So this is part of the cycle.
Okay. I'll come back to you, Ambassador, and thank you for summing it up so very well for us, taking us back to history and also talking about the tactical aspects and the strategic aspects. I'll take up the tactical and strategic aspects with the general in just a bit. But before that, Mr. Sinha, let's talk about the civilizational aspect that the ambassador spoke about. How do we deal with a state that is so deeply against India, where hatred is entrenched deep in the system itself?
Frank, as Master Mishra was so right about it, I mean, of course, he was generous to call Pakistan a revisionist state. I would call it a greedy state, actually. Initially, we thought Pakistan is a security state. India is a big country. They're afraid of India being a threat to them. But over time, you realize that even when India is not doing anything, they are still moving ahead and trying to eye what is not theirs, And that is deeply problematic till you realize that the only raison d'etre for Pakistan to exist is the two-nation theory that, largely speaking, Muslims need a homeland of their own. Once you get the homeland, what do you do with it? Especially when you have a large number of Muslims left in India. And therefore, to survive as a state, you must emphasize India as a perpetual threat. The moment India and Pakistan have normal relations with each other, and I'm speaking for the Pakistani elite and the military, not for the common people, be very clear. The moment India and Pakistan has normal relations, and you see that Hindus and Muslims and Buddhists and Sikhs and Christians and Parsis and all can live together normally, then why do you need a Pakistan? And therefore, Pakistan's inherent DNA post-47 has been that we are separate from India, that India is a threat to us. Because if India is not a threat to you, what does the Pakistani army then do? So they have created this dilemma within the state of Pakistan and the society of Pakistan increasingly that hatred for India is the only reason we can hold together. Especially after Bangladesh, you realize it, that Muslims could not live with Muslims because there are other factors involved. And therefore, the only thing that keep the country going, as a Pakistani scholar told me, if the Indonesians stop being Muslims, they're still Indonesians. If the Iranians stop being Iranians, they still be Iranians, and the Egyptians. If the Pakistanis stop being Muslim, what? So they have to emphasize not just the Muslimness, but the Muslimness against this country, which is a threat to them. So therefore, they have created this myth. He very rightly referred to Muhammad bin Qasim. He's referred to in Pakistan as the first Pakistani. When? In 712 Common Era. Pakistani. So, you have created these myths which allow you to function. Which is why it's you can have quietness. I cannot see normalcy really developing, which is the tragedy for the people. This is the point,
Right. All right, General, let me bring you to the picture now. A lot of talk has been dedicated to fighting capability, tactical aspects, and also the strategic aspects really as far as India and Pakistan are concerned. How has that really developed in recent times? And after the dilution of Article 370 and also the abrogation of 35A, how have all of these things panned out? And have the Pakistanis been able to do what they could do earlier in Jammu and Kashmir?
Frank, see, after abrogation of Article 370 and 35, it is a watershed movement as far as the Indian history is concerned. after 370 and 35 has been abrogated, Jammu and Kashmir has become integrated in the part of the country. Now it has been bifurcated into two union territory, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Now, whatever were the draconian laws which were existing earlier, they have ceased to exist, and it has now meshed with Indian Union. The point today is that as far as Pakistan is concerned, this is not been liked by them at all. We have been always claiming that Jammu and Kashmir is complete integral part of India, including the Pakistan occupied Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, which they call it separately, and Saksam Valley and Aksai Chin. And this must come back to us as we have a resolution passed in 1994. But Pakistan, is trying to fight against odds. He knows that he cannot fight to you with conventionally. It wants to create a problem in Jammu and Kashmir. It is bleeding in India with 1,000 cuts. It has started a insurgency in Kashmir, basically with the aim that they will like to get this Kashmir. They are obsessed by Kashmir. And who is obsessed by Kashmir? It is only Pakistan army. As we say, Pakistan army is a rich army which has a poor country. The power in Pakistan do not flow from Islamabad, but it flows from Rawalpindi. So all and everything is being created by Pakistan army for their own survival. Imagine what is now Pakistan going through it. Economically today, it is in such a bad state that they have a debt of $115 billion. And this China-Pakistan economic corridor has basically $62 billion debt, including add to it Dimapur Basha project, which is now been under $6 billion. Their inflation rate is more than 13%. Their foreign reserve is just about $8 billion. Cannot look after 1 month of their import. Their inflation rate is 13%. It is basically the army which is running the parallel and you can say economy. The 4G Foundation has 50 entities which they are running, from bank to real estate, from toothpaste to you can say bread. They have added now gas as well as oil. So the point is that as far as Pakistan is concerned, it is the Pakistan army called the shot, and Pakistan army will never like the India to progress. And this problem, this enmity between India and Pakistan should continue for their own survival. Imagine what has happened when Pakistan is going through a bad phase due to COVID-19. The rupee has fallen down 30% in last 1 year. Their economy is now going to grow in minus. The defense budget has increased 20%. This is the true color of Pakistan. We must realize it. Now, whatever India is doing it, this is a reality. The point is that once the reduction of the staff was done, as far as both the diplomats was concerned, it has reduced from 110 to 55. Because after we have abrogated Article 370 and 35A, Pakistan has sent back our ambassador, Mr. Ajay Bacharia. So therefore, now there is hardly any work in this diplomat. So therefore, keeping 110 chaps of Pakistani is inviting trouble, because majority of them are involved in espionage activity and their connection with terrorism. The work with this today Pakistan embassy has is only a tourism visa, nothing else. So therefore, reduction of this strength is a requirement of the day. Pakistan is involved into a cross-border terrorism, and Pakistan embassy in India, in Delhi, is involved in number of terrorist organizations trying to fund them, and also in espionage activity. So therefore, this was a step in the right direction of reducing the strength from 110 to 55. And right, we have also correspondingly reduced it.
Sure. Okay. All right then. So let me take this particular aspect forward then with you, Ambassador. The General has put into very perspective really what has happened post dilution of 370 and abrogation of 35A, of course, and he very well summed it up as far as the tactical and strategic aspects are concerned. Now let's talk about the diplomatic aspects. Many people have suggested, commentators and analysts, that there is no need for the two countries to even have the smallest of, or the most minimalistic of ties. What are your thoughts on that? And do you believe that we have to keep channels of conversation open with each other?
Oh, absolutely. Otherwise, diplomats will be out of jobs, for sure. If we cut all diplomatic types, what will happen to us? But jokes apart, as a diplomat, I will say never shut the door completely. You can shut the door partially, even 90%, but keep some channels open. And I suspect that even in the worst of times, whether it is Pakistan or other adversaries of India, we've had some channels open in some way, may not be officially, but other channels may be open. So, in any case, it's not going to make a difference as far as day functioning is concerned. I can tell you whether it's 55 or 110, it doesn't matter because the relationship does not actually have content. We know exactly what they would say if we had discussions on any issue, and they know exactly what we are going to say. And the problems are not ripe for solution because of Pakistani revisionism and revanchism. So therefore, I will say, let relations continue. But I will say something radical has happened. The general said very rightly that the Pakistani army is the problem. I would go beyond. Let's not underestimate the very strong feelings the Pakistani people also have on Kashmir. Please do not underestimate that. My request is, I know Pakistanis, how incensed they get and excited about Kashmir. Now, this could be so many factors. But once again, when you put this thought, this poison, look at this textbooks. You know, a child from the age of 4 or 3 is being brought up on a staple of hatred. And it's very difficult to get the toxicity out of your system at an older age. So this is a very significant problem. As far as Kashmir is concerned, we took some actions for internal reorganization. It's very clear it was nothing to do with either the line of control or the line of actual control with China. Internal. Now the Pakistanis went ballistic, of course, but there's a statement by the External Affairs Minister that Pakistan occupied Kashmir will one day come under Indian physical, I emphasize physical, not legal jurisdiction, but physical jurisdiction. Now, the Pakistanis see that as a very, very strong statement, but that has been our stand. We talked about the resolution of 1994. So therefore, definitely all that is happening now, the tit for tat, the expulsions, is part of this process between the two countries. Kartarpur, Pakistan wants to score some kind of tactical propaganda victory by offering opening of Kartarpur corridor.
Right.
Now, it's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. It can't happen during the COVID. So it's an impossible situation for India. So I would say, but then looking ahead for the next 10 or 20 years, as I said, with the big question is, with the power differential in terms of all the attributes of power, particularly economic power, the ratio will be 14 to 1 in 2030. Our economy will be $5.91 trillion and theirs will be $427 billion.
Right.
So the difference will be widened. Can Pakistan sustain its hostility? That is a big question. Maybe the general can answer that.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. So, Mr. Sinha, before we get there, the ambassador brought up the Kartarpur Sahib corridor. It certainly seems like a gimmick at this point in time because on the one hand, you do not want to have even any kind of cooperation as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Even on the matter of locusts, the Pakistanis do not want to, have any kind of cooperation. But here they throw the Kartarpur Singh Sahib corridor into the picture. So it looks like they seem to be up to some games even as far as these kind of issues are concerned.
Absolutely, absolutely right. I mean, Kartarpur, the whole thing was basically started because the Pakistan. It's good that they have historically opened it up so that pilgrims could go there, but the intention was very different. The intention is targeted towards the so-called referendum of 2022, when Sikhs all over the world are supposed to vote for Khalistan. You see, so the whole idea they're trying to drive a wedge in India is to the Sikhs. Listen, we want you guys. We are your friends. India has let you down. So why would you open up Kartarpur, the boundary at this point of time? But we don't allow interstate movement very easily, where quarantine is the matter of routine now. To go out of the state, 14 days routine quarantine. But the whole idea is to cause, on one side, confusion on Kartarpur, so that Punjab feels disconcerted. On the other hand, by raising the constant issue of Indian threat. For the last 6-7 months, the Pakistani foreign minister and prime minister have continuously said India is about to militarily attack Pakistan. At this moment, again, they have said so yesterday or day before. We are stuck in Ladakh sorting out a much bigger problem. But his whole idea is always to keep India unsettled. The Kartarpur move has only one move to basically unsettle India into suddenly thinking about this problem instead of dealing with India's own problems. I mean, you live by trying to unsettle the other guy because as the ambassador was so clear, the differential is going up. The Pakistani economy actually contracted last year, well before COVID. It actually contracted substantially by about $30 billion, which is huge for them. So they are in difficulty, and therefore this need continuously to keep generating controversies to keep themselves alive.
Absolutely. As far as Pakistan is concerned, General, we have to always be on our toes. We can't really count out Pakistan to try some kind of adventurism really as far as Kashmir is concerned, or anywhere else for that matter. So, what is it that we need to watch out for from a strategic and from a defense point of view?
Frank, first of all, we must now know it that there is a dispute going between India and China in Ladakh. Basically in Galwan, going in Penang Tso, going at Demchok Chumar, and also in Depsang and Daulat Beg Oldi. Now Pakistan will like to trouble this in fish water. Imagine now what Pakistan is trying to do is that it wants to help its iron friend China, and it is up to something. What they are doing is that the line of control, they have activated it. They are trying to pump in more terrorists, and there is some sort of which collusion can take place between China and Pakistan. It is a reality, we must understand it, especially in area of Siachen Glacier and Daulat Beg Oldi, because that is an area which is intrusion going inside Pakistan. One side is Pakistan, which is their basically Gilgit-Baltistan area, and on to our east is Aksai Chin. Now this is the place where the collusion can still take place in the time which we are going through a phase. So we must be very careful in the next move, not only of China, but also watch out Pakistan. And second thing is, you remember that India has got edge over China as far as our forward air bases are concerned, especially Leh and Srinagar. They are on a lower height compared to the airfield which are in Tibet Autonomous Region, which are on higher reaches. They can take less payload. But Pakistan has offered Skardu. So Chinese have already come in Skardu, and their aircraft J-11, J-10 and J-7 are there. So therefore the collusion between China and Pakistan, especially when the rift is going between India and China in Ladakh, is a reality. We must understand it and we must watch out. As far as Pakistan is concerned, the whole image of Pakistan is anti-India. The survival of Pakistan army is on anti-Indian sentiment. Like what Ambassador was telling it, that even the people, are also now feeling that Kashmir is part of them. This is a part of their DNA. Over a period of time, they have spread lies there. And Pakistan army and Pakistan ISI has played a major role in doing this. So this we have to watch out. As we are conveying it, Pakistan is in an economical mess today. The Financial Action Task Force has already about to be blacklisted after grey list. The chances are there because money laundering and terrorist funding not. Technically, we know it may not be possible because they need 3 members, which they have China, Malaysia, and Turkey. But certainly, they are in a bad state. Their, debt has increased tremendously, but they will keep on fighting with India. They will keep on sending the terrorists because this is where the survival of Pakistan army stays. So Pakistan army is now totally dependent on anti-India sentiment, and they are all going all out now to support China in fighting what they are doing in Ladakh. And this we must watch out because there can be a collusion, especially in Glacier as well as in Ladakh. And second thing is, they can be also in for some sort of a BAT action, border action team in other parts of J&K, because to make use of this situation when we are totally involved with China in Ladakh area.
Okay, all right. Time to get quick closing comments on my on the show right now. I've got limited time, so I'm going to ask my panelists to be brief. So, Ambassador, the best way forward, and also another aspect, as far as all these downgrading of ties is concerned, there is one casualty in all of this, that is sports.
Yes, sports has been a casualty, and I want to tell you a few stories now that you've tempted me with sport. The Indian team, hockey team, wore black armbands in the World League semi-finals London 2017. Now, this was quite extraordinary. They did that, and the cricket players also wore those, and there was mourning for Indians. And Mr. Dhoni also had I think, the crest of he's a member of the army. He had something on his gloves. And these kinds of signals are, again, as I said, India is more assertive because India is relatively more powerful and breaking away. So this kind of tendency will very much continue in sport. Narendra Dhruv Batra is the first non-European president of the International Hockey Federation. Now, India does not play Pakistan in hockey tournaments except those sponsored by the FIH. Nothing, no way in the world. So India has taken a very, very firm line on sport. So it's not going to happen. People to people is not going to happen. Now, I think Pakistan, as the weaker party, will have to make a choice. The ball is in their court. And as I said, if the gap is going to widen, can you sustain that kind of hostility? And there are voices in Pakistan, I know, who are saying that why do we indigenous Pakistanis, Punjabis, Baluch, Pathans, Sindhis have to take the burden of an idea that originated in the state of Uttar Pradesh in India.
Sure.
There are voices like that in Pakistan. So I would never be completely pessimistic. I would be extremely vigilant. The way forward, as the General said, Skardu. We have to be extremely worried about what's going on in our northern borders, to the east as well as to the west. And we have to be prepared, and we are prepared, of course. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Mr. Sinha, best way forward.
Yeah. One, of course, is to understand that Pakistan is not a threat to India in that sense. It's a nuisance. It's a junior partner of China. It can only pose a threat in the unlikely event of a two-front war. But because it's a nuisance, you have to be on the watch for it. Do not give it too much importance. But do understand that their calculus of victory and defeat is very different from ours. For the Pakistani army, victory means the ability to fight another day. They may cede territory, they may lose Kargil, they may lose East Bangladesh, but for them it is still not a defeat because they're still there. So when you have this irrational desires inside your thinking processes, they will be unpredictable. They would not come together anyway where India can be seen in a good light. So they would do everything possible to sabotage India's movement forward, even if it is at the cost of their own economy and their own people.
Absolutely. And General, close the show for us with your quick concluding remark.
Frank, as far as India is concerned, we have made it very clear to Pakistan, talks and cross-border terrorism cannot go together. If they want to maintain good relations with us, stop just sending terrorists from Pakistan to India. And as far as India is concerned, after abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, the Jammu Kashmir is going on the path of development. You know, the militancy has reduced considerably. 110 terrorists have killed this year only. South Kashmir is totally wiped off of Hizb al-Mujahideen, and the leadership of Lashkar-e-Toba, Jaishe Mohammed, has also finished. We only need to bring development in Jammu and Kashmir so that it is integrated. The basic reason for enmity between India and Pakistan will stop in case the Jammu and Kashmir totally get integrated with India, which is in a step by step we are addressing it, because the problem is the development which is now in the focus of the government of the day. And as we are proceeding in a systematic way, the terrorism is being wiped off. Hurriyat is a history. OGW has been totally wiped off. So therefore, a very good future exists for Jammu and Kashmir if we handle our things properly and bring the development in this part of the country in time to come.
Okay, all right. With that, then I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that Pakistan will do everything possible to try and hurt and sabotage India. Pakistan is not a threat. It's more of a nuisance, is what the panelists are suggesting. But even the nuisance needs to be dealt with. Ties are not going to improve anytime in the near future. And this is something that we have to be we have to digest, and this is something that we have to live with. To use a sporting analogy, the ball is in Pakistan's court. Really, if it wants to improve ties, let's see what happens in the near future. With that, it's a wrap. See you again.